Everything in this video is drawn from historical records, archived reporting, memorial work, and publicly documented events tied to Hunt County. This is not speculation. This is what the record says and what the record teaches. Long before this county learned to hide hard truths under consultant language, executive session, and polished statements, it learned an older trick. If enough people participate in the silence, nobody has to call it silence at all. They can call it order. They can call it custom. They can call it the way things are. That is where doctrine begins, not with a speech, with repetition. These are the lessons in the ledger. The first lesson was public. In Greenville on January 11th, 1885, the record shows that Thomas Petty, a black man accused of assaulting a white woman, was taken by a white mob and lynched before charges were filed and before real process had time to become process at all. The machinery of law was there, the courthouse was there, the jail was there, the officials were there. What was missing wasn't structure, it was intervention. That is the first lesson in the ledger. A county can witness terror in public, fail to stop it, and still wake up the next morning wearing its badge. That is not just brutality, it is permission. 1 year later, on September 1st, 1886, John Smith, a 23-year-old black man, was lynched in Greenville. By then, the county no longer had the excuse of surprise. It knew the shape of this act. It knew what a prisoner in custody could become after dark. It knew what happened when accusation became enough and process stayed ornamental. That is the second lesson. Once terror happens without consequence, repetition begins to normalize what should have shattered the place. The weather changes. A body swings. The square opens in the morning. People learn to call that order. Then the doctrine widened. On July 26, 1889, George Lindley, a black laborer in Wolf City, was lynched. Historical reporting ties the killing to racial hostility surrounding labor displacement at a local brickyard where white workers were being replaced by black laborers. That matters because the doctrine is no longer only policing accusation or custody. It is policing labor, hierarchy. The social order underneath the economy itself. That is the third lesson. Once public violence gets close enough to labor and local commerce, the county starts learning how to absorb atrocity into procedure, into hearings, into examination, into paperwork thick enough to make everybody feel like something official occurred, even when the moral reality remains exactly what it was the night before. That is when the doctrine learns to write. Then came Ted Smith. On July 28, 1908, Ted Smith, an 18-year-old black farmhand, was taken by a mob in Greenville and burned to death. Modern memorial reporting places the crowd at roughly 2,500 people. That number matters not because arithmetic changes horror, but because scale changes meaning. A murder is one thing. A public burning in the center of town, carried by thousands, is instruction. It is choreography. It is a county teaching itself what it can witness and still survive without surrendering its self-image. That is the fourth lesson. Not just that terror happened, that the civic pieces were all there. Officials, officers, buildings, procedure, public space, everything required for a functioning community was present except the will to stop what was happening. That is not chaos. That is doctrine. Taken together, these are not random flashes of old Texas violence. They form a sequence. First, terror is permitted. Then it is repeated. Then it is processed. Then it is remembered badly on purpose. That is what the ledger teaches. Not just what happened, what was learned from it. Because by the time modern Hunt County learned to hide hard truths in agendas, minutes, executive session, bond language, and procedural fog, the deeper lesson was already old. A room does not need unanimous evil. It only needs enough people to participate, enough people to excuse, enough people to look away, and enough people to keep life moving the next day. That is how Doctrine survives. Not because everybody believes it, because enough people decide the price of naming it correctly is higher than the price of living inside it. That is why this matters. Not to relive the county's ugliest pages for spectacle, to understand what they built and what still echoes. The Doctrine didn't begin in a boardroom. It began much earlier, repeated, survived, and eventually refined. That's what the ledger shows. My name is Cass Wakefield, and this is the Hunt County Signal. If there's a local story, archive, or public memory in Hunt County you think belongs in the ledger, leave it in the comments. Because around here, the record is never just what happened, it is what the county learned it could survive.